A bellowed "Avanti!" caused Brunetti to raise his eyebrows. Signorina Elettra her hands from the keys. "Oh my, oh my, oh my," she said, by way of warning. "I am just going inside and may be some time," Brunetti said in English, to her consternation. Inside, he found Brunetti in his no-nonsense commander of armed men mode, one with which Brunetti was amply familiar. He adjusted his posture accordingly and walked to the seat Pata indicated in front of his desk. "Why wasn't I called last night? Why was I kept in the dark about this?" Pata's voice was irate but calm, as suited an official with a hard job to do and no help from the people around him, certainly not from the one in front of him. "I informed you about the death when I left our dinner, Dottore," Brunetti said. "By the time we finished our initial investigation, it was after 3 in the morning, and I didn't want to disturb you at that hour." Before Pata could say, as he usually did at this point, that there was no time, day or night, when he was not prepared to assume the responsibilities of his office, Brunetti said, "I knew I should have done it, sir, but I thought a few hours would make no difference, and we'd both be able to deal with things if we both had a decent night's sleep." "You certainly seem to have done so," Brunetti was unable to stop himself from saying. Brunetti ignored the remark, or at least allowed no response to it to show on the bland face he raised to his superior. "You seem to have no idea of who the dead woman is," Pata said. "The woman upstairs said her name was Costanza Altavilla, Dottore," Brunetti said in what he tried to make sound like a helpful voice. Barely managing to suppress his exasperation, Pata said, "She's the mother of my son's former veterinarian. That's who she is." Pata paused to allow the significance of this to register on Brunetti, then added, "I met her once." It was seldom that Pata left Brunetti utterly without words, but Brunetti had over the years developed a defensive response even to that rare event. He put his most serious expression on his face, nodded sagely a few times, and let out a long and very thoughtful He did not understand why, time after time, Pata was deceived by this, as he was again. Perhaps his superior had no coherent memory, or perhaps he was incapable of responding to outward manifestations of extreme deference in any other way, as an alpha dog is incapable of attacking a dog that flips over and shows its soft underbelly and throat. Brunetti knew that there was nothing he could say. He could not risk saying, "I didn't realize that," without Pata's hearing sarcasm, nor could he ask Pata to explain a relationship the importance of which he must obviously think self-evident, and to the degree that he valued his job. He could not express curiosity about the fact that Pata's son had a veterinarian rather than a doctor. He waited, head tilted to one side in the manner of a very attentive dog. Salvo used to have a husky. They're very delicate, especially in this climate. He was plagued with eczema because of the heat. Dottor Nicolini was the only one who seemed able to do anything to help him. "What happened, sir?" Brunetti asked, honestly curious. "Oh, Salvo had to give the dog away. It became too much trouble for him. But he formed a good opinion of the doctor and certainly would want us to help him in any way possible." There was no doubt about it. Brunetti heard the sound of real human concern in Pata's voice. Even after all these years, Brunetti had not learned to predict when Pata, in some unguarded moment, would give evidence of fellow feeling with humanity. He was always unmanned by it, seduced into the suspicion that trace elements of humanity were still to be found in his superior soul. Pata's recidivism into his ordinary heartlessness had not broken Brunetti of his willingness to be deceived. "Is he still here?" Brunetti asked, wondering if Pata had contacted Signora Altavilla's son, but unwilling to ask. No, he got a job somewhere else, Vicenza, Verona, I forget which." "I see," Brunetti said, nodding as if he understood. "And is he still working as a veterinarian, do you think?" Pata lifted his head as if he'd suddenly detected a strange odor. "Why do you ask?" "We have to contact him. There's no address book in the apartment, and I couldn't go upstairs at that hour to ask the woman who lives there. But if he's still a veterinarian, he should be listed in one of those 2 cities." Of course we should contact him, Pata said with quickly manufactured irritation, quite as if Brunetti had opposed the idea. I hardly thought I'd have to explain something as simple as that to you, Brunetti. Then, to prevent Brunetti from getting to his feet, he continued, I want this settled quickly. We can't have people in this city thinking they aren't safe in their homes. Indeed, Vice Questore, Brunetti said instantly, curious to know who might have suggested to Pata that Signora Altavilla's death might lead to thoughts of safety. I'll have a look and I'll call Signora Giusti. Who? Pata asked suspiciously. The woman upstairs, sir. She seems to have known the dead woman quite well. Then she ought to know how to get in touch with the son. I hope so, Dottore, Brunetti said, and started to get to his feet. What do you intend to do about the press? Pata asked him. Have they been in touch with you, sir? Yes, Pata answered and gave Brunetti a long stare, as if he suspected that either he or Vianello, or quite possibly Rizzardi, had spent the rest of the early morning hours on the phone to reporters. What have they asked? They know the woman's name, and they've asked about the circumstances of her death, but nothing more than they usually ask. What have you told them? That the circumstances of her death are already under examination, and we expect a report from the Medico Legale sometime today or tomorrow. Brunetti nodded in approval. Then I'll see about getting in touch with the son, sir. The woman upstairs will surely know how to find him. Then, before Pata could ask, Brunetti said, she was in no condition to answer questions last night, sir. When Pata did not answer, Brunetti said, I'll go and speak to her. Later in the same day, Brunetti finds himself going home to have a meal. He opened his own door, and at the scent of what must be something concerning pumpkin and something else that involved chicken, he rediscovered his interest in aromas and the food that produced them. In the kitchen, he found Paola at the table, intent on a magazine. One of the habits she had developed over the years was to read soft-covered material only in the kitchen, books in her study, and in bed. The university on strike? He asked, as he bent down to kiss her. She turned as he spoke, so he ended up kissing her right ear instead of the top of her head. Neither of them minded. No, she answered. Only one of my students showed up for class, so I canceled the class and came home. She let the magazine slip onto the table, where it fell open at the article she was reading. Brunetti glanced down and saw what looked like an agitated white cloud covering the top of the left page. What's that? He asked, picking it up and holding it at the distance his eyesight now dictated. She passed her reading glasses to him. He closed one earpiece and held the lenses up to his eyes. Chickens? He asked. He took a closer look. Chickens? He dropped the magazine on the table and handed her back her glasses. What's it about? It's one of the usual horror articles, the sort of thing you wish you hadn't started reading, but then can't stop once you begin. About what's done to them. Chickens? Horror chickens? He inquired, listening to the sound of crackling from the oven, a sure portent of what was roasting inside. It's something Chiara brought home and told me to read. Paola rested her head on her hand and asked, do you think that's another sign that they've grown beyond your control? What? When they stop asking you to read things and start telling you to read them. It could be, he said, and went over to the refrigerator in search of something that would dull the horror of the chicken. Lying in one of the drawers at the bottom, he saw a few bottles of Moet. Where'd the champagne come from? He asked. One of my students, she answered. Students? Yes, he passed his final exam a few days ago, and he sent me a few bottles. Why? I oversaw his thesis. It was brilliant, about the use of the imagery of light in the late novels. Suddenly alert, Brunetti realized this was the moment crucial for intervention. If he did not act immediately, head her off, stop her, he was faced with a yet-to-be-determined period of time listening to what a student had written under the direction of his lady wife about the use of light imagery in the late novels of Henry James. Considering the fact that he had recently endured a meeting with Vice Questore Giuseppe Pata and yesterday had held only 3 tramezzini, one of them stolen, for lunch, he decided that no time was to be lost. "How many bottles did he send you?" he asked, stalling for time. "A few cases." "What?" "A few cases, 3 or 4, I don't remember." This, Brunetti knew, was the consequence of being born into a noble family that was possessed not only of pedigree, but of great wealth. You lost count of the cases of Moet that the students sent you. "That's a bribe," he said in his bad cop voice. "What?" "A bribe. I'm shocked you'd accept it. I hope you didn't give him a high grade on his thesis." "As high as I could. It was brilliant." Brunetti buried his face in his hands and moaned. He pulled out one of the bottles and took 2 glasses from the cabinet. He put the glasses on the table, making a lot of noise as he set them down, then turned his attention to the bottle, ripping off the gold foil. He aimed the cork at the far corner and pushed it off. The explosion shot through the house and warmed his heart. He had disturbed the bottle, and so the champagne foamed out and ran across his hand. Quickly, he poured some into the first glass, which it overran, then into the second, where the same thing happened. 2 small puddles spread around the glasses. "Quick, quick," he said, handing her a glass. Saying nothing else, he tapped his glass against hers, said, "Chin chin," and drank deep. "Ah," he said, at peace with the world once more. With another quick swig, he emptied the glass. "What's the matter with you?" Paola asked, then picked up her glass and took a sip. After she said it, "What are you doing?" "Destroying the evidence." Thank you.